let's go wind up the context here just really briefly. For a long time, Benjamin Netanyahu said, I cannot negotiate with the Palestinians because they don't have a unified government. And that includes negotiating with Mahmoud Abbas, who runs the West Bank. And as I've said before, Mahmoud Abbas is the only player here who has any power, who is committed to the two-state solution, who has worked tremendously hard within the West Bank to secure Israeli security. There is a huge amount of dissatisfaction with him amongst Palestinians. He is, if you believe in the moderate two-state New York Times editorial board view of this, Mahmoud Abbas is fulfilling those obligations like no one else. Netanyahu doesn't care, won't negotiate with him. There isn't a unified government. Then Abbas cuts a deal with Hamas, which is frankly a symbol of Hamas's, ever since Hamas has been in government in Gaza for several years now, they have moderated. That is a function of them being in power. They're a disgusting group. I loathe their politics. I loathe their anti-Jewish politics. I loathe their internal politics in Gaza. It's very repressive. It's very conservative. I loathe their targeting of civilians. But the reality is governing shifted the parameters of what they were doing. They were willing to cut a deal and informally embrace some type of two-state process. Netanyahu says, you cut a deal with Hamas, I'm done. That's the stasis. And then these Israeli teenagers are kidnapped by what seems clear to be a rogue Hamas cell, not operating with the authority of Hamas, but a cell that was known to want to continue civilian targeting, probably almost certainly did not approve of the deal with Abbas. They kidnapped these kids. Now, Israel went into this, and the Netanyahu government went into this large public mode, and Ali Ghraib mentioned this on the show last week. We got to find these kids, even though the government had known and put a gag order on Israeli media that these kids were already murdered. So it's one of the most cynical acts imaginable. As soon as the deaths were confirmed, operations began. Netanyahu talked about getting vengeance. Now, what he wants to do is he wanted to justify and push Hamas back into this international pariah position, which is fine. They should be to some extent. But he wanted to distract from the issue of his inability and refusal to negotiate, his refusal to do anything to move the ball forward in any way, and then to appease people who are frankly to the far right of him in his coalition. There's actually people to the right of Netanyahu. That would be like if Dick Cheney governed in coalition with Michelle Bachmann and Alan West. And that's who Netanyahu's working for, placating. And it's also his own instincts as well. So, but Netanyahu does not want Hamas to entirely lose control of Gaza, because then Gaza will be an entirely, completely ungoverned mess. And in fact, Hamas at many times has restrained smaller groups and held back rocket fire, as an example. Which has already been minimized significantly because of Iron Dome, obviously. Netanyahu does not want to govern Gaza. He wants to basically just have it be a perpetual open-air prison, not be bothered by it. And Hamas needs to have some power to actually make that work. It will never be the direct subcontractor that he has in the West Bank, but it could be something in Gaza. So how does he punish Hamas, reshift the global conversation, but not entirely dislodge Hamas? I think that's the assessment that I've seen that makes the most sense to me from Daniel Levy and folks like that. Hamas has a convergence of interest with the Israeli right because Hamas is profoundly unpopular in Gaza. And what would unify a people around a governing authority, even one that was a total failure, internally repressive, and engaged in methods that you found loathsome? Probably a massive and brutal bombing and ground invasion of a highly densely populated area, half of whom are children. So that's the context of what's happening, and the convergence of interests between the right on both sides is always going to be there.